الحمد لله رب العالمين صلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, we have a special show that we have been advertising for the last week, almost even, we wanted to even do it before that, but we were trying to get hold of the brother, inshallah, that you'll know soon, bi'iznillahi ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, all of us are obviously aware of what's happening inside Gaza, what's happening in general in the Middle East, and all of the area of Sham in general, all the way from Damascus to Gaza. And the amazing thing about this whole thing is that you will find that Muslims are connected to Masjid al-Aqsa aqidatan. And this is a call from the aqidah to be wanting to protect Masjid al-Aqsa, to serve Masjid al-Aqsa, to serve the people of Aqsa, Sham in general. And we saw that in the last decade when it came to Syria and the kind or the ways that the Muslims responded, whether they were doctors and engineers, teachers, sincere Muslims in general who were wanting to be part of stopping the oppression in Syria, or now what we are seeing in Gaza. Alhamdulillah, this has been the case throughout centuries, from the sons and daughters of the Ummah wanting to sacrifice, wanting to give, wanting to be part of pain and suffering and victories of this Ummah. Because at the end of the day, we are part of the Islamic Ummah. We are, when the Ummah hurts, we hurt. So inshallah, to bring with everything that we just talked about, we have with us Dr. Abdur-Rafay. Some of you may know him. This may be first time you are seeing his interview. He was recently in Gaza. Spent more than 3 weeks in the European hospital inside Gaza. Obviously, there has been a lot. There's a lot that we need to cover, brothers and sisters. A lot of things that you might want to know. Inshallah, we are going to hear from the horse's mouth, as they say, someone who's been on the ground, somebody who understands what we were watching, let's say, on the news, but somebody that's been there and was witness to the kind of bloodletting, a genocide being committed inside Gaza. Inshallah, so we are going to welcome Dr. Abdur-Rafay. Dr. Abdur-Rafay, welcome to Islamic Oasis Live. Akhi.
Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Sheikh, first of all, welcome to Islamic Oasis. It's an honor to have you. One of the things that we have been very good at, alhamdulillah, is always bringing doctors from war zones. Sometimes from war zones, sometimes people have been in the war zones. And, we've had Dr. Shahjul Islam many times on this show. We have had other doctors who have served in many different theaters as far as medical doctors are concerned. Sheikh, so again, it's an honor that we are able to host you, especially with this recent situation happening in Gaza. Sheikh, so tell us, Dr. Abdur-Rafay, there's a lot of things that people want to know. First of all, about the situation in Gaza. How did you get to Gaza? What is the motivation behind going to a war zone which is live and could have taken your life?
Jazakumullah khairan. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala al-Imam al-Huda wal-Muttaqin, Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I've been wanting to go to Gaza for a while, basically since October, November, and I've tried with different NGOs and so forth. But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was able to open up a path for me recently and allowed us to go in and serve the people there. The motivation, of course, is as you said in your introduction, is aqidah. It's from the aqidah. It's that this is a genocide that's happening. Everybody can see on their screens day-to-day massacres of people. And I felt compelled that I need to do something with my hands, with my capability as a physician, to go and aid the innocent people in Gaza. We've all seen the pictures, we've cried, we've had emotional impact on this. And for me, it was about taking some action within my capacity as a doctor to see if I can do something, some help. Obviously, it's not a solution, but it is where I'm able to assist in trying to save a life, if that is possible, with the will of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So that's essentially the motivation factor. Um, you know, um, Obviously, you can see so much, and the iman, the aqidah, the emotions have to move you, and that was the sort of the driving factor. And this, of course, as you mentioned in your introduction as well, this is the blessed land. This is Masjid al-Aqsa. This is Asham. These are blessed people, and unfortunately, they are being demonized, and our blood has become quite cheap. And there's so much that one can take. So that's how it happened. In terms of actually getting there, there are many medical groups, many NGOs that go into war zones, and whether they are um, uh, uh, governmental or non-governmental, or even the UN convoys and etc. They're all there um, in these theaters of war. And you know this very well too. I'm sure if you've been to some of these areas. So the way it works is the way at least it worked in my case was that I started to work with an NGO and applied with them, and all these NGOs, especially the medical groups, they work with the WHO, the World Health Organization, which is under the UN, and so they rotate teams in and out of Gaza. So some teams come in for a couple of weeks, others for 3 weeks, others for a month, so on and so forth. So these teams come in and out, and bring in their physicians, nurses, EMTs, whoever it is. So alhamdulillah, I was able to go through them. But obviously, with these NGOs, you're not guaranteed an entry. It is at the behest of the Zionists, the Israelis, to approve you to come in. You have to apply it with the organization. The WHO has to approve it, they have to approve the mission, and they have to coordinate with the Egyptians. And when we went, it was with the Egyptians and the Israelis to coordinate. So and so team is coming in. These are the professionals. These are who they are. This is their passport, and so on. So that's kind of how it worked. But they can deny you at any point. They can say, the way we went was we left from here. So I'm from Chicago, so I left from Chicago to go to Cairo, and then from Cairo, take a bus basically to take transportation to Rafah, the Egyptian side of the border. So at any point during this, you could be denied ahead of time. You could be denied as you land. You could be denied at the Egyptian crossing on the Rafah side, um, and they can give you any reason whatsoever. There is no reason necessary, essentially. But alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the doors for us, myself, and I was able to go. Alhamdulillah, it was a blessing. Um, uh, Something that was in my heart for a long time, and alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala um, allowed me to enter with his qada, with his mercy. The situation, as you know, it's worse than what we sometimes see on social media. There is one thing where you see the pictures. There is a different thing when you actually have to treat these patients, when you have to actually see the scenes of blood and flesh and mangled bodies all over the place. It's a different scene. It's a different thing altogether when you have to hold shaheed children in your hand, versus seeing them on your phones. Um, the day-to-day lives of the people is traumatic. The day-to-day struggles of water and food and just trying to survive is just insane. These are atrocious circumstances that they're in, and subhanallah, they still have resilience, and they're still um, have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the situation is bad. And as you know, over the past week, what has happened further in Rafah, further in Deir Bala, in Jabalia, and all these other places where they're continuously massacring people. Obviously, there's no question there's a genocide going on. I mean, I saw it, right? And we all see it.
See, let me ask you something,
Yeah.
Sheikh. Look, the thing is, I remember when I was coming back, many a times coming back from Aleppo, and as you know, Aleppo was being bombarded like there's no tomorrow, and many times when I would come back, even inside Turkey, and then coming back here, the people would ask me, "Is this real, man? I mean, is there real
Yeah.
barrel bombing going on? I mean, do you really? Is this serious? I mean, the kind of destruction that we're seeing on the videos or on TV. I mean, even the Turks sometimes would ask very surprisingly, like in Rehania or in Gaziantep, when I would come back out of Turkey or Syria. And so, has this happened to you? I mean, look, Sheikh, a lot of what you're saying, it really, it connects with me in many ways. When you're talking about children being, pieces of flesh of children and bodies and all of this, Sheikh, what has been the question since you come back? What are you facing as far as from even the Muslims and also from non-Muslims and in general?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously it's very clear, it's very true. It's. I mean, we went to Khan Yunis, completely decimated, not a single building left intact. Schools, masajids, homes, markets, roads are complete rubble, and there's no paved roads because they've bombed the whole town to pieces. It's a scene of apocalyptic nature. Essentially, you walk in there and you're walking in craters,
Right.
and you can smell the gunpowder and all of that stuff. It's completely destroyed. And think about it: a city completely into rubble, and then people who have been able to come back to Khan Yunis to see if somehow they can salvage something from their homes. They're there, they're kind of picking children. You will see children picking up concrete bricks and stuff, kind of building a little shelter for themselves, putting a tent up. Kids with bottles trying to find water, etc. I mean, this is insane. It's not science fiction. These are things that you see in science fiction, where you go to people have been saying this, the movies of sci-fi movies where you live in a dystopian era, and then you live in these sort of uh, uh, towns that have been destroyed by nuclear war and all of that stuff. I'm sure everybody's seen those. It is like that.
Yeah.
Complete towns completely massacred.
And you're
And
talking about 25 miles, Sheikh.
Sorry?
You're talking about 25 miles, just decimated, completely.
It's decimated. I mean, it's completely decimated. I mean, you have, obviously everyone's seen the aerial pictures from Gaza, from the north, and so on. But I saw it myself. You can drive through this whole town, and there is nothing left because they've completely destroyed it. And basically, when I was there, the Rafah invasion started a few days after I was.
Right. And then they closed the borders on you, it seems.
And they closed the borders, and they moved from the eastern side, and they were moving further in, and they were bombing, carpet bombing whole of Rafah. And when I was at the hospital, every day you heard bombs going off. You heard these bombs going off throughout the day. It would shake the buildings, it would shake the hospital, and we saw some bombs as well. And you could see the the explosion, the fire, and all that stuff. There was active bombing going on while we were there, and nowhere is safe. Absolutely nowhere is safe. You could be going down the street, and all of a sudden you could have a bomb on you, and you have no protection whatsoever. They are not, it's not targeted bombing. It's bombing to destroy everything.
This is
there's
the
no
thing.
such thing.
Hold on, Sheikh. Hold on, because I'm going to ask you very, very, very pointed question here. Look, Sheikh. For instance, now I'm gonna bring some comparisons here. Now, look. It seems when the bombings happened in Aleppo, or when it happened in Idlib, or when they happened, what they were doing was the idea was to bomb the people so much that they agree uh, to whatever it is that governments want to negotiate. Yani, for instance, in case of Syria, there would be a negotiated agreement, whatever would happen in Astana, and then that they knew that the people on the ground would not accept this, so they would just bomb the schmack out of the people to a point where people would have no choice, days and days and days, and then they would accept. Is this what you're seeing happening in Gaza, Sheikhi? Almost textbook repetition happening in Gaza, where
there's 100%. I mean, anybody who understands political analysis and understands how wars are conducted of ethnic cleansing, this is the game plan, which is that you bomb them into acceptance, right? An acceptance of a. So the resistance. Anybody who puts up a resistance, that gets played into a political plan that people are forced to now accept because the decisions are made elsewhere, right? So the people are forced because how much can you take, right? So for example, they told, okay, this area of Rafah is no longer safe. They dropped leaflets. They said, okay, this is not the green zone anymore. It's the red zone. Now move from the red zone to more central into Rafah, and so forth, and then move into Mawasi. People did that. Then they bombed that area. Right? They've been doing that, bombing people from the north, going into the central portion, moving them to Rafah, and now bombing Rafah, and now moving people to these tent cities in Mawasi, which is on the coast, which has nothing.
Describe Mawasi for me, Sheikh. Describe, because a lot of this is constantly on the news, and we have projects there. But a lot of times when we, what is Mawasi? What is the importance of Mawasi?
So Mawasi is on the coastal area. So coastal area in the south. You could say southwest part of Rafah. It's a different town altogether, and it's nothing but sand. There is no infrastructure there. There is no water. There is no electricity. So there's tents. The city is of tents. Just people living in tents, making makeshift sanitation facilities. So basically, they're digging holes in the ground and using that as a bathroom, or they're digging holes to find groundwater. This groundwater is not consumable. It's salty. It's dirty. Somehow they have to filter it, and there's no electricity. If you have a solar panel for some reason, however you were able to get a solar panel as you evacuated from Rafah, then you have some power. Otherwise, you're living in the dark. And there is thousands of families that have been now moved to that region. So basically, going back to the point is that you end up forcing people to accept whatever is now on the table. You bomb them to smithereens. They have absolutely no other option to say, okay, this is the so-called peace resolution we want to do. This is the plan. Either you accept or we continue the bombing, or we continue the genocide. And you can see that has always been the plan. I mean, this idea that the Zionists talk about is mowing the lawn. It is very real. That's essentially what they're doing. The 275 people and over almost 600, 700 injured, 275 killed, and 600 something that were injured just recently.
Right. Massacre.
It's a massacre. And there's absolutely no care. And people, they see this on the ground. They know that this area is the next. The next is this area. They know the hospital is going to be targeted at some point. So this European General Hospital, which I was at, it's at the south of Khan Yunis, north of Rafah. People over there, they knew that this is going to be the next target because Shifa Hospital, they completely destroyed it. And they've destroyed multiple hospitals, and they're specifically targeting hospitals. There is Shuhada Al-Aqsa Hospital still functioning, which is not a full capacity hospital. It's on a specialized OBGYN hospital. But that's where the recent atrocities, the recent casualties came to. Kamal Adwan Hospital is also, you would say these are clinics, really. The only real functioning hospital that's still kind of left behind is the European Gaza Hospital. But even that is now under threat, because when we were there, they were bombing all around it, and you could hear and see the bombs. Right, they bombed a masjid which was maybe 400, 500 meters away from the hospital. And we saw casualties coming in, and majority of them kids with shrapnel and so forth. So this is exactly what's happening, unfortunately. Now, in terms of what for example, they talked about this Israel. The peace treaty, the ceasefire treaty or the peace treaty is being offered. Hamas is not agreeing. Israel is agreeing. They play these games. We know exactly. I mean, anybody who understands this, they'll know exactly that this is just games that Israel is playing, just to buy some time to, force a final solution. Which is they want the whole of Gaza. They want the population to be evacuated out at some point and take over.
Okay, all right. That's yes. There's a lot of questions there, but
there's my analysis. Obviously, I could be incorrect, but that's what
let me hold on, because I'll get there. But here's the thing. Yeah. So we hear a lot of drones, right? Constantly drones. Of course, drones have become warfare is a whole new thing that's happening in many different war zones. Anytime, even when we receive our videos, Sheikh, for our projects, constantly there is that unknowing sound that's there,
yes.
Right? That thing is just up there. So tell me about that, Sheikh. How does it feel to be under there at all times, 24 hours a day for the last now? Yeah. People have been going through it for the last 7-8 months. I mean, you were there 3 weeks. How does it feel to hear that at all times, Sheikh?
The first thing that you hear as soon as, so when we entered through the Rafah side, as soon as you cross over from the Egyptian side into the Palestinian side, the first thing you hear are these drones. Constantly. They run 24/7, and there's different types of drones, surveillance drones and drones that have live ammunition as well, and so forth. But these drones are running 24/7 constantly. That's the first thing. The ominous presence of the drones is always there. Sometimes when the drones are not running, you think, hey, what's happening? Where are these drones? And then you will realize, oh, maybe there's a bombing coming. So people kind of said, okay, if the drones are not running, then there's a bombing coming.
Right.
That was the
It seems to be. If you can actually hear it, then you're safe. It seems.
Correct. Yes. Because
this is always
they're running 24/7. They never stop, and it's part of their psychological sort of warfare to keep the people under duress. That's these things are buzzing all night long, 24/7, and you can hear them as they come down towards the surface a little bit. They get louder. If they go up, you can notice the sound waves are a bit different, but they're running constantly. Initially, this was a bit of we had to get used to it. I had to get used to go to sleep while these drones were going on. But after a day or two, I was completely fine with it. But the people completely ignore it. There's like this 8 months of this, it doesn't faze them now. SubhanAllah, there's one point where the kids are playing soccer in the hospital yard in the neighborhood, and there's bombs going off in the background, and SubhanAllah, these kids are just they don't care. They're living their life. They're playing soccer. They're laughing, enjoying, etc. And the bombs are going off in the background, and it doesn't faze them. There's a word that they use over there in Gaza very commonly. It's called tiglagish. Tiglagish means don't worry, don't worry. And this is normal for everything. Yeah, no big deal. Don't worry, tiglagish. It became like a thing. But SubhanAllah, that's the reality, unfortunately. And it's that it's annoying, like annoying fly, it comes to your ear and it's buzzing all day long. That's how it is. You swat it, it comes back again. So that's basically it. But SubhanAllah, people are used to it.
Sheikh, there's so let's when you're getting to Rafah, right? Obviously, you're going through the Egyptian side. I guess you guys went through the Arish side. Then you get into this area.
So what we did, the plan was we landed in Cairo, and from Qahira we basically took a convoy led by the WHO, with multiple NGOs to enter on the to go to the Egyptian side of Rafah. Now
how many hours is that? 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hours?
So from Cairo to Rafah, it's a 5-hour drive. But for us to go from Cairo to Rafah to wait at the Egyptian side of the border and then finally cross over into the Palestinian side was 13 hours. It was a 13-hour trek.
Wow. Okay.
Just to go through, just to go to the other side of the border, because there was checkpoints after checkpoints, checking.
Yeah.
The convoy is essentially led by a team from the WHO, and there's multiple other NGOs that go in this convoy. So, but they check. There's a checkpoint after checkpoint just on the route to Rafah, and then when you get to the Egyptian side of the border, you're just you're it's like staying in a pen. It's completely horrible facilities. They make it very, very difficult for the people. Even in normal times, apparently, because I was talking to the locals there, and they were saying that during the normal times, the place would be packed with hundreds of people, with no fan, no air conditioning, people sweating, no facilities to take your bags. There's no carts, nothing of that sort. And we were basically, it took us 13 hours, and on the route, on the way there, you have miles and miles of aid trucks just waiting their turn to get in. Yeah. They're just waiting their turn to get in. They cannot get in because the Egyptians are not allowing it and at the behest of the Zionists, the Israelis. So you would see them. I mean, miles of trucks. These are semi-trucks with pallets of aid coming from across the world. I mean, subhanAllah, the Muslim Ummah gives a lot. We give with open hands and open hearts, and you could see aid from the Muslim world across the world, from Indonesia, from here in the United States, from European countries. Everybody has their aid organization label on these trucks, and there are aid coming from non-Muslim countries as well. The World Kitchen. What was that? They killed.
Yeah.
I forget their name completely, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes,
so even from there, you can see the trucks that were from that organization were still lined up on the borders. And subhanAllah, that just aid is just sitting there. And the truck drivers just, they get out of the trucks, they're just, have their mattress and their food, and they're just waiting for days on end to enter into Rafah to give aid to the people. But it's not being allowed. As simple as that. It's not being allowed. And that whole journey is, you have these pallets of trucks waiting to go in, and the stuff that we took. So all these NGOs are coming, the medical groups. So we took 150, almost 200 cases, 200 suitcases worth of medical equipment, whether it's orthopedic supplies, IVs, medicines, female hygiene stuff, everything that we could think of that we would need to function as a proper medical team, we took with us. And that was about 150, almost 200 cases. And we took that immense amount of aid on our person. So we're carrying this, right? We're not taking a truck into Gaza. So whatever we had to use is what we brought in. Whatever we could use, we brought in on our person. And that was backbreaking work to carry all of this, to herd all of this
suitcases and all of this stuff. Yeah, sure. 200. Yeah. And how many are you guys together? How many were you in the team?
So the team we had was about 17 physicians and a couple of nurses. And obviously there was other people who were already people who part of the administration and so forth, who were with the organization. They were already in Rafah, who work there, locals, but this is that was essentially the team. And even by the time, think about it, by the time our trip was coming to an end, we were running out of supplies. We were running out of the stuff that we brought in. So all of the medical stuff that the hospitals need to treat people are coming from aid organizations or NGOs, medical NGOs, who are bringing this stuff in. Now, as we were leaving, we were basically at that point the last organization that was that was still present, right? Us and another NGO. Because after they took over Rafah, they stopped everything. You could not. There was no way going in or out. So
So
now they
did they
completely
did they tell
occupied
you
that
guys
area.
that okay guys, they're closing the borders. We may be here for another week or so. We don't know. Was there any
Yeah.
communication
So
with the teams
yeah,
inside?
correct. So the coordination happens with the WHO. So
Mm,
the Israelis inform the WHO, and the WHO informs the aid organizations. Now, when they started to invade into Rafah, they, slowly positioned from the east and coming in. They took over the eastern side, and then they took over the border. And then they announced, that's it, nobody coming in and out because we're controlling the Rafah border. Because that was the only border that was open, or
right.
partially open, you would say, something. So once they occupied this, they have complete control. The Zionists have complete control from the north to the south, essentially. You know, so they basically said that we're not allowing anybody in or not allowing anybody to go out. And my original trip was for about 2 weeks. So when this happened, now the question started to be asked is how do we get our aid groups out? How do we get, because it's a rotation. So you were there for a couple of weeks, and then another team comes in, and that's
Mm,
how they rotate in and out. So we would leave and another team would come in.
mm.
But once they occupied it, there was no safe corridor to leave, and this is where the WHO started to sort of negotiate with the Israelis on one side, the Egyptian, and see if the Egypt will allow another crossing to open up, and or
Yes,
Jordan will take
they have
control.
Salam also, but they.
So what happened at the end was that because of the diplomatic pressure, and I think, and then the American embassy in Jerusalem got involved, and there was some pressure from the families here
Mm,
that they opened, they allowed for a safe corridor through Karam Abu Salam, which
mm,
or they call it Karam Shalom border, which
uh,
is which is east of Rafah. So they basically said, look, this is when you guys are leaving. You got these couple hours to leave. This is you're gonna take this particular route that they map out for you. You're gonna go along the Rafah border with Egypt, go through the old Rafah border, and come down towards the Karam Abu Salim border crossing. And then from there, a convoy from the American and the British embassy picked us up and took us to Jerusalem. So
it took
that's
you to
essentially
they
what
took you
happened.
to Jerusalem from there.
Yeah, so you have an option. They give a look. Do you want to go to Tel Aviv? We say no. We want to go to Masjid al-Aqsa.
Okay,
So,
so they take you to
subhanallah,
Jerusalem
so
from the Jerusalem. You
they
took
took
the
us to
flight, so
Jerusalem. Yeah. Sorry.
no. What happens? You go you you're
So
going
yeah,
to.
coming back. Yeah, coming back. I flew out of Tel Aviv back here. But the initial plan was to go through Rafah, come out through Rafah, and leave from Cairo. But obviously that didn't happen because the whole border was closed. So now they had to figure out another way to get the medical staff out. So they used the Karim Abu Salam border, and then from there, the U.S. embassy and the British embassy sent a convoy for the American and British aid workers, and they took us to Jerusalem, and then we spent a day or two in Jerusalem, and then from Tel Aviv I left back home.
Oh, okay. So you went. Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. So they
Yeah,
went
yeah,
from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv and Tel Aviv back to, because that's where the airport is, the Ben Gurion,
yeah.
right?
The
So
airport is only Tel Aviv is the only airport.
right.
In that
So
place.
Sheikh, let me
Yeah.
ask you this: when it comes to, all right, somebody is.
Sorry, there's kids in the background.
So
Hey guys. Uh, okay.
okay, so
Okay.
Sheikh, let me ask you this for the Egyptians.
Yeah.
There's so much talk that's happening with the way the Egyptians themselves are treating those who are trying to come out of it. We saw the video of a kid coming out on the border, and the way he was dealt with. The manhandled him and did what they did.
Mhm.
Sheikh, I mean, when you are there, obviously Egyptian army is a Muslim army. At least that's what they claim to be.
Yeah.
What is what? How do you? What is the feeling when you're going through? this situation,
Yeah.
Sheikh, and looking at the Egyptian army and seeing what you're seeing?
I mean, it's a very sad situation, and your blood boils. Honestly, it's because the border between Egypt and Rafah it's a triple bordered. If I can use that term. There's a barbed fence. Then there's a concrete wall. You know, the walls that the Israelis built in West Bank, just like that. A wall that
Yeah,
goes
this was
from
supposedly
all the
newly
way.
built. Something.
Yeah, so I think there was reinforcement of it. There was always a border there, but there was reinforcement with these concrete walls. So there is the barbed wire, the concrete wall, then there is a road in between where the tanks and the army personnel pass through, and then there is another wall behind it. So it's three walls, three fenced, essentially. One fence, two walls. And you could see that. You could see as I was leaving, we were basically on my right side was the Egyptian side, on the left side was the Palestinian side, and we drove along the whole wall. And you could see that. You could see the soldiers on that side. You could see the Humvees and the towers where they're stationed, etc. Um, and they're guarding this place. And even when we were at the Rafah border, I mean, the treatment was very horrible. Right? There was
By the
no
Egyptians.
by the Egyptian side, and these are all obviously government employed workers, etc. And the treatment was horrible. You know, basically no respect. They open up everything. They check all of your bags and so forth. Um, and even on the airport in Cairo, when I landed, I was the first one to land from the group, and I had suitcases filled with medicines and equipment, orthopedic stuff, supplies, and they basically stopped me and said, "Okay, we need to go through all these medicines." And I said, "Look, I'm here for a medical mission trip for Gaza. These are just medicines for the Muslimin. And I'm trying to talk to them from an Aqidah perspective." But they're like, "No, we need to check this because because we're not allowing narcotics." That's the whole thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
For some
understand. Look,
reason,
there's
why do
probably
they
an
say
issue.
that, Sheikh? Why do they say it's almost
Yeah,
in every war zone? We are not allowing anesthesia or things like this. It's a very common thing. Why is that?
So I mean, look, see, I get it. Okay, they say, look, there's an issue of drug abuse. There's an issue of that's happening. The drug abuse of narcotics. I get it.
Okay.
But I'm not here to sell drugs on the street.
You mean drug trade going on?
Yeah. So they talk about we have a problem with narcotic abuse in Egypt. That's the word on the street.
I see what. Yeah, that's an excuse. Okay.
Narcotics can be sold. It's an issue of a problem of addiction, so on and so forth. I understand that you want to control that level of drugs, but I'm here on a medical mission to take medicine to the other side, to the Palestinians. I'm not here to sell drugs on the street, right? But they don't understand that. They're like, okay, we're not going to. They didn't allow us to take hard medicine, hardcore pain medication that you need for a war zone. I mean, if you have a child, for example, I have a child. I did a surgery on a kid, 14-year-old kid. I had to amputate his leg. He's been suffering for 6 months because of a bomb blast injury, a broken femur, external fixator on his leg, mangled extremity. 14-year-old kid, he's skin and bones. And eventually I have to amputate this child's leg. And the pain medication I'm giving him is Tylenol and ibuprofen.
Ya salam.
Tylenol and ibuprofen. Because there is no hydrocodone, there is no oxycodone, there is no fentanyl, there is no morphine. These drugs that you need to handle that level of pain, a 14-year-old pain. I mean, and this is not just one. I mean, there's hundreds of patients and hundreds of young children who do not have the appropriate medication because it is not allowed. They're not allowing you to take these drugs.
Sheikh, is this also a form of punishment? Because I saw the same thing in Syria. I mean, they kept saying that, look, we cannot allow this, we cannot allow this, we cannot allow this. I mean, I didn't hear them saying that this is a problem that we have in Turkey. But, do you think, I mean, I'm asking you, I'm thinking out loud with you a little bit here, but is this to also increase the pain and the punishment, do you think, on the people?
It is. 100% is systemic. It is control. It is on purpose to make the people suffer the worst kind of pain possible.
Mm.
For now, there's no. For example, just this week they allowed a new health care team to come in, okay? And now the regulations are you cannot have more than 2 suitcases for personal use. So Israel is saying, if you want to come as a doctor, you can only bring 2 suitcases worth of only personal use. So you cannot carry tons of medication, you cannot carry equipment, you cannot carry stuff that you need for intubation, nothing. You can only take 2 suitcases worth of your stuff. You can only carry so much cash, and you can only carry so much amount of food. That's it.
So what do they allow as far as cash is concerned? When you go to the border, what kind of cash people are carrying?
So cash is a bit of an issue because unfortunately they can make these sort of connections, saying that you're taking money to support X, Y, and Z organization, and you're sponsoring terror, this, that, etc. Mm-hmm. So cash is an issue. So that's why what we took was medical stuff. Right? You have to take some cash just to buy things, but we have to be very, very careful and have receipts saying that this is what we bought and this is who we donated money to. So the money or whatever goes to the organization, to the NGO that's working, and they have control over the receipts. Because unfortunately, the situation is that they can take anything and use that against the aid workers, use that against well-intentioned people, and say that you are sponsoring terror, you are sponsoring this, and so forth. So that's why cash is a bit of an issue. But look, I mean, people need basic things over there. Soap was a hot commodity. Soap there was people were lacking soap. The soap that I used was what I brought with myself. And so forth. Sterilization is an issue. The equipment that I've used, they're filled with rust. The suturing kits, etc. The equipment is poor quality. There's a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old children, babies, came in with shrapnel injuries, with a skull fracture, because of the bombing. Kids with skull fractures and shrapnel injuries all over their bodies. And I'm trying to suture these lacerations and suture them up. The needle is not penetrating the skin because of so poor quality.
And they're very thick in general in this area. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's poor quality. Either they came from they're manufactured in Egypt or wherever it is. It's poor quality stuff. It's just cheap stuff. And just going through the skin is causing more pain to this child. The mother is just holding it and saying, we're reciting du'as and Bismillah and have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and whatever we can to comfort the child. But that's the situation there, right? So the medical equipment is running out. There's nothing. They're preventing medical equipment and medicine to come in, and this is on purpose to make the people suffer more. There's people in the whole hospital compound area is just a refugee camp. Yeah. There's people living in and around the hospitals. There's about estimated 30,000 people. Families with kids, multiple kids, people without some people without parents, or mother is not there, or the child. Every single person has had some traumatic thing happen to them. Someone has been injured or dead. Or shaheed. And the hospital wards are filled with people with external fixators, with infected wounds, with massive injuries that require special care. Even if you bring them to the United States, you have to take them to high-level university settings to fix these injuries they have. It cannot be done at your local community hospital. You need specialized care. And that's not there. And going back to the question of people coming to Egypt, some people were able to evacuate to Egypt for medical reasons, right? A few people here and there, a few kids, they were allowed to go, but now they're not even allowing that. Nobody can leave.
So what
Nobody
I've
can
heard,
leave.
Sheikh, is that the Egyptian hospital on the other side in Arish, this is about 85,000 people are on the other side. Is this accurate number
So I
here?
don't, to be honest, I don't know the number.
Okay.
I do not know the number, but I personally saw some families, some kids, some injured individuals leaving from in ambulances
Mm.
from the Egyptian side of Rafah when we were entering at that time
So
when the
do they
border was
allow
open.
Egyptian ambulances come in and out, Sheikh? Is this something that's
No,
happening? Or
no,
is
they
it
don't. I don't.
the Palestinian Red Crescent? I guess they are the ones who
The
transfer it.
Palestinian, yeah, the PRCFS or whoever it is, they bring in towards the Egyptian side and then they take them and then transport them if they are accepted to an Egyptian hospital. But even there, in Egyptian hospitals, they're just lying in the hospital. They're not being treated properly
Yeah,
either.
yeah, yeah. I heard even about the hospital itself is a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess, and to the point that one of the brothers were telling us a story about this is that they're locked in these hospitals. They cannot leave because they say like, oh, if you leave, then you become a burden on the Egyptian economy, this, that, etc. So they're not allowed to leave the hospital either. So you're just put in another cage kind of situation there. And then the other part is this sort of, I would say, human trafficking that has been going on, where people had to pay $5,000 per
Ah,
person to this company to take them across.
right,
And
right.
this company, which is related to the Egyptian government, made millions
Mm.
trying to,
Yeah, I heard $4 million a day.
making millions of this upon millions on profit on the backs of people who are undergoing genocide.
So what, Sheikh?
Um,
Let's. Okay, so tell me the scene, Sheikh. As far as the people are concerned, the people inside. I mean,
I mean,
I get.
yeah.
I'm sure that you're going to. I guess the khiyana that I'm sure that they feel from the Muslim world,
Mhm,
from the
mhm,
Muslims. You have 80 million, if not 100 million Muslims in Egypt, and whatever million in Jordan, and the rest of the Muslim world.
yeah.
When they, how do they talk about this khiyana, Sheikh?
And I one of the questions I asked the Palestinians that I interacted with, I said, "What's the hal? What's the solution to all of this?" And they put up their hands and they say, "It's with Allah alone. There's no other solution. It's with Allah." And now, if you probe deep into that and you ask them, okay, yes, of course, aqidatan, of course, from our iman, every solution is from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. We understand this. Um, they very well know that the Arab governments, the Muslim governments, are all traitors. Whether it is Erdogan, whether it is Sisi, whether it's Abdullah, and so forth. They all know that the Muslim governments have betrayed them and they are traitors. There is no doubt in their minds. The second point they will mention is, again, this is from my interaction, and they mention is that where is the Ummah? Where is the Muslim Ummah? Where is the Ummah to come save us, essentially? Um, they appreciate all of the protests that's going on across the world. They appreciate even the non-Muslims protesting and calling for a ceasefire and so forth. They recognize that the Ummah uh, in general is doing uh, the sort of protesting and social media thing, and some people who are coming and helping. They recognize that they are appreciative of this. But the question still remains: is where is the Ummah? Which essentially they're saying, who is there to come save us? Essentially, who is there to stop us? They all recognize that the UN, the Security Council, all the Western nations are in cohesion with the Zionists, and they are responsible for this. Um, but they have hope in only Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It's as simple as that. They don't see a practical way out of this other than to keep calling for a ceasefire and to stop the occupation and so forth. But who's coming for them? That's how they say, who's coming for us, and that's where they come and say, look, it's only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you cannot blame them, because we have seen 8 months of this, and nothing has stopped the genocidal hand of the Zionists and the American sponsors. Nothing. They continue to increase the massacres, completely continue to bring in aid, and the Muslim governments are aiding in this genocide. If it wasn't for Egypt or Jordan, these borders would have opened, but they're obviously kept closed, and they continue to do this. Having said that, I mean the people. I mean, subhanallah, every day in the morning, going across our room to the hospital entrance, swarms of kids would come and they hug you, like they knew you by name. Doctor this, doctor that. Okay, thank you. They come and they say, they take a picture with us. They hug you. They love this amount of love that the people have shown to us was immense. You could melt with this, and the kids are so innocent. I mean, these kids are there is no school, right? There's no education. There's no future. The universities are destroyed. The schools are destroyed, and they're basically living on the streets. How much can you keep them inside a tent? They're out with their t-shirt and some pajama on. They've been wearing that for months, days on end. Uh, you know, they walk on the streets without any slippers, and you can see cuts and bruises. But they're surviving. They're able to take some relief from the situation by seeing somebody outside, right? By playing outside. We played soccer with the kids, and this was some moments of happiness for them, right? To take them out of this sort of living under the shadow of death every second of their life. But people still have it, iman. They still say Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Every time they meet you, they say Atik al-afiyah. I mean, the every day, especially before the evacuations started, every day in the morning there was a Quran halaqa that used to happen in the courtyard, where hundreds of kids, mostly women, reading the Quran, memorizing the Quran. Huffaz you can find left and right. I mean, children who are Huffaz. And the Quran is recited continuously. I mean, this one girl comes to me and says, take my picture, take my video, let me recite Quran. I said, yeah, okay. And she's reciting with iman, with force, with the displeasure of reciting. And subhanallah, there's an air of iman in the town. You can feel it; it's palpable. But you cannot defeat a people like this. You cannot defeat a people who are happy at the sight of death, to become shuhada. You're not going to uh, weaken their spirits. Yes, their physical bodies are tired. All the doctors, the nurses, none of them are getting. They're not getting paid. They come in every day to treat the shuhada, the injured. None of them are getting paid. They are exhausted physically. They're exhausted. Their skin and bones. Some of them have been displaced multiple times from the north to the south. Some of them were at Shifa Hospital, and now they're here. But you will see them amputees praying in the hospital corridors. You'll see them um, uh, not missing a salah, and you'll see them and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at every moment. And to the point, I mean, every day this morning I would go, there was one uncle who was making his pita bread, in the hospital corridor, because that's where you're getting power, right, in the hospital corridor. So he had an electric stove. These aunties would make the dough and make bread, and he would give his piece of bread in the morning to me. oh, here, take this piece of bread. And he's just making it for his family, and they have nothing, but they give you the morsels of food they have in their plate. This one brother, he was finishing his food. He had his last bite, and he said, "Come eat with me. I mean, come and eat with me. Share my last morsel of food." Um, this is the people that these kuffar are trying to massacre. You cannot defeat a people like this who are truly radiallahu anhu wa radwan, as we say, right? Inshallah, they are accepted of that level. Um, but the question again goes back to our responsibility outside as an ummah. You know, um, where what do we do to stop this? That's the ultimate question that has to be asked. I'll stop there.
Sheikh, no, there's a lot there, Sheikh. Sheikh, how important is it that that the Muslim doctors get involved in this? How, in general? Look, I'm asking you. In we saw a lot of this in Syria. We saw a lot of this in Afghanistan. We saw a lot of this in Bosnia. We saw a lot of this in Somalia. I remember talking to a doctor in Somalia. He said, "Look, I can take out a bullet in my sleep." And the amount of bullets he took out in his life, and he was just saying, "Look, I have 10,000 that I can count." So I remember these people in these war zones, Sheikh. But here's the question I'm asking. Even when I speak to doctors in Syria, and when the whole situation still continues to happen, they said, I mean, of course, there's a lot of Western doctors who went there and who stayed there and things like this. Sheikh, but at one point they lost hope in the doctors coming from the West. And they said, we need to train our own and we need to work on our own. We cannot be dependent on that. Saying that, and having said that, how important is it for Muslims with skills to be able to be in these type of places?
Yeah, see, it's actually important, but there's an issue of attitude there too. Is that, look, you cannot come into these war zones as being, oh, I'm a Western doctor, I'm here to.
I'm all of that. No, that I understand, of course.
Right.
I'm talking from the Muslims having that responsibility, that accountability to themselves.
It is a responsibility for the physicians who are able to go to do the best they can in these war zones. It is required because they need that sort of foreign aid. They need help. They're exhausted. Right? You're coming there to
but
help.
Sometimes expertise.
Yeah, and their expertise, exactly. There are certain expertise they don't have, because many of our in these locations, they don't have that level of training. So the hospital I was at, it's a teaching hospital. So there's medical students, there's residents that were working with us, and alhamdulillah, our team made it a point to teach these medical students and residents of how to do certain procedures, how to take care of patients and teach them. And we made it a point to impart the knowledge we have to these medical students and to these residents that were there. Because we're not, it's about elevating the status of the medical facilities in these localities so they can become self-sufficient at one point in time, and to educate the people. For example, the medical students, subhanAllah, they were so dedicated. There's no university. Universities are destroyed. They're not getting any education in the classrooms. They're getting education, real life education in the hospitals while seeing patients, while the doctors are training them on hand, giving the knife in their hands, or allowing them to intubate and so forth, and take care of these patients. They're continuing their education despite the genocide happening.
Right.
Think about that. Right? These are not your millennials or your Gen Zs. There, these are products of our ummah who are continuing their medical education, continue to be residents, and continue the training despite despite a genocide happening. Despite, by the way, all of them are refugees.
Mm.
All of them have lost homes. Some of them are, subhanAllah, this one girl, my first day there, we did a clinic. I was looking at patients, and she was helping me translate and see patients for myself. And and I'm like, okay, go, go, go. I have these patients I got to see. I'm going through these patients, and I look over. She is sweating. She looks like she's going to collapse.
Mm.
And I ask her, what's going on? You look like you're going to faint. She said, I haven't eaten for a while.
Mm. Yeah.
Subhanallah. She said, I hadn't eaten. I said, for how long? She wouldn't answer. And subhanallah, I just had some, protein bars, etc. I said, sit down, here's a bottle of water, eat something. That's the situation. There is another person, she was fasting basically every day because whatever reasons, but she was fasting every day and coming to the hospital. There's morsels of food that they have, unfortunately. So they have that dedication that they still want to learn, they still want to finish their education. Some are fifth year, sixth year in their medical schools, or others are, third, fourth year in the residencies. There's no graduation. We just, of course, the spring semester ended. We had all graduations here. There is no graduation happening. So it is a big requirement for Muslim physicians if they're able to go to these zones to teach people their expertise, to bring in aid, to develop the local physicians in techniques that we have in the West and so forth. But it is part of the responsibility. In my opinion, it's you took an oath to do good by your patients and so forth, and it is for the help of the Muslim Ummah. And alhamdulillah, look, there are people who I would say there's many physicians who would want to go to these areas, but sometimes they don't know how to. They don't know how to go through these organizations and so forth. And of course, there's a big issue about if you go into an active
Terrorism
war,
and this and that, no nonsense. Yeah.
family pressure is there. Stuff like this can happen, and this is part of anyone's life. Not everybody is cut out for it. But at the end of the day, look, I think one of the questions people asked when I came back was, "Were you not afraid?" And that's the big thing. Because you're going in active, one of the most deadliest regions at this point, genocide happening, and of course anything can happen. But life and death is in the hands of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. You could go there and you could die there, and if you die, alhamdulillah, maybe you're accepted as a shaheed. Or you could come down the stairs and you fall and trip in your house.
True, very true,
That's the
very
end
true,
of it.
very
That's the
true.
end of it. But alhamdulillah, from at least from my perspective, alhamdulillah, my family was very supportive. My wife was very supportive.
MashaAllah.
She knew that I had the intention of going, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens the doors for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your protector. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides you, and so forth. And alhamdulillah, the support base was there. The wife was supportive. The parents, subhanallah, I must say, I was pleasantly surprised. If your mom's favorite, or you're the oldest child of the family, your mother will probably say, you're going to leave me here, and it's a whole scene that can happen. I was expecting that, a lot of tears and so forth, but subhanallah, both my parents, they said, go with safety, come back with safety. They were alhamdulillah supportive. So subhanallah, there are people who, not just myself, obviously, there's people who have sacrificed much more to go to these war zones, but the people over there, their sacrifice is way more than what we can do, what we have done.
Of course.
So in short, yes, I think it's a responsibility that medical professionals do their best to go and help the Ummah in any way they're possible in these war zones, especially.
I think, Sheikh, in some ways also there should be an education some type of discussion in how physicians, people with skills that can go in and out of these war zones. There has to be, because a lot of people want to do, as you said, want to go, but they don't know how to. They don't know the in and outs, the know-how. And inshallah, I think
think the
we're going
best
to
way
work on
is
that.
right. The best way is to reach out to the NGOs that are in that sort of work.
On the ground
On
working.
the
Sheikh,
ground work.
how was your welcoming at the airport? We have special status at the airport, as you know.
Yeah, subhanallah. I mean,
one thing before you begin. I say this to the people here. I say, look, there are lines that we will be in that inshallah that they will not be in. It's the only way. Sometimes you kind of say to yourself, right? So tell me, you get out of the plane and there's welcoming party there for you.
Yeah, so subhanallah, I mean, I land back in Chicago, and the pilot, I texted my wife, said, "Hey, I landed." She replies, "Okay, I'm on my way." And then we're leaving off the plane. The pilot announces, "Please have your passports open."
Right, that's for you, right?
As you deplane. So at that time, I'm tired.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't, nothing connects, and I didn't realize that was meant for me.
Right. You have to know that now. From now on, by the way, that SSSS is going to be a big thing.
So, I mean, look, I get stopped regularly at airports, especially if I come back and stuff like that. But I'm used to it. But for some reason, it didn't click at that point. Anyway, so as I deplane, I'm on the jet bridge. Two agents basically take me in. Says, "Okay, well, this is the guy," and they said, "Yeah, please come with us." And they take my passport, and I said, "Okay, let me call my wife, let her know what's happening, so that she knows. I'm going to be a few minutes delayed." And they're like, "No, put your phone away," and then they confiscate the phone. And then so they questioned me for over 3 hours. I said, "I need to call my wife and let her know." So it's like, "Okay, what's her number?" Uses the landline to call it and basically says, "Speak in English." It's like, all right, so they questioned me about everything. How did I end up going into Gaza? How did I get clearance? What was my trip like? Who did I meet? What did you do? Who did you give money to? Details of everything in my life, essentially. My type of work, where do you home address, phone numbers, etc. I said, look, everything is public. There's nothing. I went there for a humanitarian cause. Went there for a medical purpose, to serve the people, and that was my mission. And he started to question my motivations.
Right.
Why did you go there? What was your purpose? And he's like, why didn't you go to other countries? For example, Ukraine.
Yeah. Oh, good. You're not the only one, bro. So I remember them asking me that. I told them, "You're there. Why do I need to be there? You got enough over there. $65 billion is enough, bro."
Yeah. SubhanAllah. I mean, I said, "Look, man."
It seems like this is a common question, bro. Why not Ukraine?
I know, it's just like, okay, why not Ukraine?
Yeah.
I said, look, this is the Holy Land. It has a spiritual connection for us. Right. It has a spiritual connection. There's a genocide happening, and I went there to help. And I use the term. I mean, it's like I don't care what your politics are in this matter.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, what are you hiding? For God's sake?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're careful about not making political statements and so forth.
Right. They want you to make that, and that's
But I can say it up front. So this is what was my purpose, and and then he goes into what are your activities here locally. Where do you go to the masjid? What masjid do you attend?
Right.
How much money did you collect? How much money did you get from donations? Was the masjid involved in it? Trying to kind of connect the web somehow.
Yeah. As if there's some secret,
there's some secret stuff like that. It's like, no, I mean, look, obviously said, look, it's donations from the families, from people, and these are my receipts. People give. I was there for a medical purpose, and I did my job, and I came back, and you should know this. And
Yeah.
the route I took was obviously the State Department, the embassy in Jerusalem. They knew that these were American sort of
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
foreign nationals that were there. They were stuck. It was on the news and so forth, and they were evacuated and so on. But look, it's all about harassment. You know what's happening on the university campuses. You know what's happening with people who are getting badgered by certain organizations in regards to any sort of position people are taking on this issue. Because there are lines being
Was
drawn.
it a Muslim guy that questioned you? Somehow they always bring me a Muslim guy, and then he's always a Hyderabadi, for God's sakes. You know.
No, it,
Oh,
it was a non-Muslim person. There was two people. One guy took the phone and he was looking into it, um, and the other guy was questioning me. And I said, "Fine, just take my phone. There's nothing there. See pictures.
how
Look at."
long did they keep your phone, Sheikh?
So I said, "I need my phone back. I need it for work." And they said, "No, we have to look into it further, and we'll let you know when it's ready." Essentially, so. They
Did
gave
they
me a
just pull?
receipt and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So did they just
Yeah,
send
the
it in the mail?
emails. Yeah, they
Right.
mailed it
Right. Yeah, they
about
usually mail it.
I
Yeah.
think about a week and a half, almost. Yeah, a week and a half or so later, and I got it in the mail. They copy paste everything. It was like, there's nothing there. If you want,
Right.
I'm sure if you want to take a look at the pictures, go ahead, change your mind. These are the atrocities I saw, and I've documented. Burnt to the bone people, limbs blown off, children's with amputations, with 70-80% of their bodies blown off, chest wounds. There's one, subhanallah, one 4-year-old kid was burnt. About 70-80% of his body is burnt. His lung was shattered, his spleen was shattered. I'm doing CPR on him. He doesn't survive. There's a infant had her head blown off. You know, um, um,
Sheikh, let me ask you this: How did they
yes,
manage?
anyway, so that's essentially what happened. And to the point that to finish the
No,
point
no,
is
hold on,
that
hold on.
this
Let
is
me. I'm
yeah,
gonna come back to that, but I just want to go back
yeah,
just for a moment here. For instance, I don't know how the situation is in Gaza, but in Syria, there was a lot of problems, especially for the treatment of women. I mean, at that time, in the beginning of the revolution,
yeah,
there was not enough women in the hospital, so a lot of the women would not show up. Period, and they would die
yeah.
under the rubble. And so, did you see that? I mean, how is are there a lot of women working in the field? It seems like there are, the way you're mentioning, but
Yeah,
يعني-
alhamdulillah, there are women nurses, staff members, some doctors as well that are there. Alhamdulillah, there are women physicians there. They're still working. They're courageous, and
right.
subhanallah, may Allah protect them.
I mean,
They have their own families. They have parents
yes,
and elderly people, and they have their own children, etc. But many of them are actually living in the hospital vicinity or in the hospitals, finding a room somewhere, and they're coming to work. They're coming to treat these patients. So there are women medical professionals that are there. A lot of the casualties are women and children, and
yeah, that's what I
a
wanted to
lot of
also
the
ask. I
casualties
mean,
are they're women and children. Many, of course, uh, die upon arrival. Some who have survived, they may survive a day or two, especially with major trauma. The mortality rate was very high. So if we try to save somebody who comes in from within major trauma, we may be able to save them for a day, maybe 2 days, but then they eventually die of infection, of
right.
wounds. They may die of organ failure. Um, uh, you
لا
know,
حول ولا قوة.
anything. I mean, the mortality rate was just insanely high, especially even with the children, with the kids. The ICU was infected with all the vents were infected with multi-drug resistant bacteria. So even if you get into the ICU, you're intubated. 100% you're getting infected because of the vents are all infected, and the whole system is infected. Um, so survival rate is low. So the amount of women and children is, of course, very, very high. Even among the men, especially the young men. SubhanAllah, they've targeted limbs on purpose.
Right. No, that's
They
another
target limbs
question
and
I was going to ask. I mean, look,
yeah,
in many war zones, what I have seen is that they target
yeah,
young men, and then especially they target them in a way that they can completely. Most of the time, what I saw was to make them handicapped for the rest of their lives.
correct. Yes.
It's almost
So
like
my
again, that's another type
yeah,
of punishment.
it is.
Go ahead.
It's so my specialty is lower extremity reconstructive surgery, trauma, and so forth. So I do everything from lower extremity and of course, over there it's all hands on deck. I'm doing stuff that I don't do normally in my profession here, but you have to at that time, right? But anyway, so the amount of lower extremity trauma that I saw was just insane. Insane. Gunshot wounds,
Uh,
shrapnel injuries, where the limbs were specifically targeted. And you can see this very clearly, just the amount of people that I saw that had that level of trauma. So they target your kneecaps. So they blow
mm,
off the kneecap, and that injures your popliteal artery, and you die. If you die, you die in excruciating pain, and you bleed out. The femoral artery is targeted, the femur is targeted, the hip is targeted. So if you die a painful death. Basically, you're bleeding out, from these injuries. Now, if you survive, you're maimed for life.
yeah. I don't know.
Because even if you get a surgery to repair it and you're not getting a total fixation, you're put in external fixators, you're getting a below the knee amputation or you're getting above the knee amputation, or you get a complete hip disarticulation. These massive wounds can either cause you to die on a slow and painful way, or you're maimed for life. And that not only just psychologically and physically hurt you, it affects the whole family. Because now this young man who's 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old, who was the sole provider of the family, is not able to provide for the family. Right now, he becomes a burden on his wife or his parents or his children because he is unable to move. And let's say even if you like the amount of amputations I've done is just crazy. These 3 weeks I was there on children and adults and women. Even if let's say you get an amputation, there is no prosthetic limbs.
Right. That's yes,
There
yes,
is
of
no
course.
prosthetic limbs.
Yes, yes.
There's no prosthetic limbs. There's no crutches.
There's
There are
nothing.
no wheelchairs. You're just stuck,
I
you
don't know.
know, even if you survive. So you have a whole generation of men and children who are double
Subhanallah.
amputees or amputees or who are maimed, who will grow up, who themselves will psychologically think that being a burden. And of course, for us, we have iman, we have aqidah, we have the Quran, we have Jannah, the idea of Jannah and not. We are able to understand these emotions and channel them in the correct understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will of course reward you at the end. But nonetheless, the mental and the physical pain, the pain is still present.
Sheikh, let me
So
ask you regarding this. We have seen a lot of. Again, I'm doing a lot of comparisons from what I've seen. I mean, look, Sheikh, we've seen a lot of people commit suicide in the hospitals, in at least in Syria. After
yeah,
a while, I guess here's what I'm asking: during the war itself, of course, there's a lot that goes on. Uh, People are in an emergency thing. There's a lot of adrenaline just going through, and
mhm,
people are. But then when everything kind of calms down, Sheikh, when that's where the real problems start happening. And uh,
yeah,
what I've seen is that there's only a certain amount that people can take, Sheikh, and then we have seen people taking their own lives in the hospital sometimes because they have lost everything and there is nothing to live for. I mean, what do you think the future of this war after 5 years, after 2 years,
yeah.
heck, after 6 months, if everything comes down, what do you
So so
see
far when I
happening?
so far when I was there, I personally did not hear about somebody committing suicide, but I did see kids and adults who are psychologically shattered. You know,
Right, of
they
course. I mean, this is
they're completely they're completely shattered, and then and especially the children who have these massive injuries. Um, they're children. They don't have the mental capacity to deal with this. Obviously, adults, of course, have something more, but um, the psychological trauma is insane. It is going to be, it will last for decades. And there are kids who need psychological care, who need psychiatrists, who are probably in depression and who may have suicidal thoughts, and there is that psychological trauma. There's some kids that come in and they have a massive injuries and they're not even crying. They're in shock.
Yeah, hasbi Allah.
They're in shock. Because the emotional center is gone, right? Because of this impact, the shock is there. This recently, there was a video that came out of a kid that was abducted by the Zionists and tortured, etc. They start, losing the ability to speak. They can't process this. So, subhanallah, this is there, and this is going to be a need that, at this point, it cannot be fulfilled on how to treat the children like this or the adults like this, because there's an active genocide happening. This is something that you think about: how do I bring back such people to a functioning society, to a functioning mental state? This is the time when you have peace, but there is no peace. There is no stopping.
Yeah.
There is no stopping of the bombardment. And human beings are human beings. They can only take so much at some point. Eventually, like you said, the mental breakdown happens. But I don't think
people walk around on the streets, and many times I've seen this. And look, 20 years in Somalia, actually 30 years now, 12, 13 years in Syria, Afghanistan. Yeah. A lot of times you see people walking around like zombies, that they have, as if there is nothing there, and they're just walking around. They don't know why. I mean, sometimes, Sheikh, when you what, I guess I'm asking you, what will be the future? Are we going to have to come to some type of a new study to treat our people in the future with what they have gone through?
Yeah. Subhanallah, the amount of pain the Ummah has gone through for the past 20, 25, 30 years.
Last 50, 100 years, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, just in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Just in our lifetime, if we look at I remember one of my first memories was the Gulf War in the 90s, the early 1990s, first Gulf War, and seeing depleted uranium being used. And you remember that scene where the soldier was on the tank, completely charred because of a depleted uranium bomb that was used. Those are one of my first images that I remember. And then, seeing Bosnia and so forth. We know the whole situation. As an ummah, this level of trauma is unparalleled to any other people. How this will have an impact in the years to come, especially for the people of Gaza or the people of Syria, for example, or the people
look, Sheikh, كل الشام تحت النار, Sheikh. The whole of Sham is under fire, Sheikh.
Iraq and so forth, right? So, for us, look, there is obviously the connection with the Aqidah. There's always this connection with Islam and the Quran, etc. We have that spiritual connection to tolerate and to go through this level of pain and still have yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Still say Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, or still say Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. The Alhamdulillah, when the people say Alhamdulillah over there, they really mean it. It's not lip service. To say Alhamdulillah while there's a bomb falling upon you, it's something different, right? So I honestly don't know how we're gonna be able to deal with this. There's research is just research. It's like research in warfare and trauma, etc. It doesn't give you. It just gives you some numbers, honestly. Okay, these were so many cases with PTSD. PTSD. I mean, especially if in the healthcare, we talk about PTSD over American soldiers in Iraq War and etc., and then suicide rate going high, etc. Um, I don't think there is an expansive research on that, on how are the stats of PTSD in the Sham and the consequences of it. We don't have that. We don't have the luxury
Yeah.
to do these studies.
Right.
It's simple as that.
As simple as
This
that.
is probably not in the heads of any of the people there, and in general, the even the amount of people who would even participate in such a study would be negligible. Um, but that data, at least in my experience, in my opinion, it's not there. But it's I don't know how beneficial it would be anyway. Because the trauma continues.
Sheikh, let me now talk to the Muslims here, and there's a lot of people will be watching this show. They're going to watch this show. They're going to see this, especially because Gaza being fresh, another new theater open to the Muslims. Allah knows what's going to be after. There's a talk of many things happening in Bosnia again. There is, as you know, the Muslims in India, the situation where that's going. There's a lot, as if already Muslims are kind of getting ready for the next one. I wonder what the next one is coming. Who's going to be the next target of the Western nations? Sheikh, so when you're talking to the Muslims, let's say you're giving these talks, and I'm sure you're giving khutbahs, talks, many Muslims who want to know your experiences in general. What do you say to them? What is the end game? Where do we need to go from here?
I think we have to look at it from a civilizational perspective. Look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah As-Saf says, يُرِيدُونَ لِيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَاللَّهُ مُتِمُّ نُورِهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. Right? That they want to extinguish the light of Islam. Right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never allow this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will brighten His light, will elevate His light, will complete His nur. Even though the kuffar disbelieve this. If the past 25 years or so, just from 9/11 onwards, if we haven't understood that this is a civilizational conflict between Islam and
ideological, and this is not just...
It's an ideological concept. Yeah, it's an ideological warfare that's happening. Everywhere you look, from the east to the west, China in Xinjiang province, Burma, India, Kashmir, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria,
Bosnia, Waziristan,
Bosnia. The list goes on. Somalia, Mali,
right,
and so forth, in African countries, etc. Everywhere you go, you see that the Muslim Ummah is suffering in the hands of the West, whether it is the United States, Britain, or a collection of all of them. And we have to look at it from an ideological civilization perspective, because it is not you're gonna speak about one issue, say, okay, we're going to call for a ceasefire, we're going to call for the genocide to end, and then there's another genocide happening in Sudan.
Right. That's another ballgame. Inshallah, we're going to have somebody from Sudan speak to us.
In the Congo, etc., because of cobalt and all these multinational corporations. It's this world order, which is a colonial, capitalist, secular, liberal world order, is at your necks. Right? Is that they are there to extinguish this light of Islam, which is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you as an ummah. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. And this, you as an ummah, we as an ummah, we are the best among all of the people that have come, not because of your ethnicity or anything, because you call for the good, you forbid the evil, and you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have a mandate from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to call for the deen of Islam, to call for the good of Islam, to call for the implementation of the rule of Islam, to bring about the adl, the justice of Islam. Who can give justice to the people in Gaza? The UN, the ICC, the international community, the Security Council, the West.
They are the criminals.
They're the culprits. If it is not for the deen of Islam, the implementation of Islam, the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where is the justice going to come from? And this is, I think, we have to look beyond the what is immediate to look at the ultimate solution here, right? Okay, fine. Of course, we want a ceasefire. Of course, we want this to stop, but that doesn't eliminate the occupation. Israel will continue. They have been doing so for the past, 70 plus years. They have been doing it one after the other. Even if you go to the West Bank, currently, they're destroying the West Bank. In Jenin, they're just taking a bulldozer and running through all these houses, destroying cars, destroying the roads, destroying the infrastructure in the West Bank. Yeah. How are we going to build this again?
And also in India, I mean, as we speak, there's actually they just yesterday after the even though the new elections of all of that, one of the brothers was telling me that they're in, I think, Akbar area something, they're destroying homes. Nobody's saying a word. At least maybe West Bank, in some ways, people still know what's happening in India, but the Muslims don't. They don't even. There is no understanding.
Yes, nobody exactly. So, I mean, even what's coming out of the Congo and the Sudan, it's nothing as compared to what we see in Gaza, because the information is not there, or it's not getting the attention. But there is no authority. There is no political authority, a united front for the Ummah to defend the Ummah, to take care of its problems, to take care of its issues, to provide justice and put an end to this, right? And that's where I think the call has to be understood in this manner: is that, look, beyond the charity, beyond the medical missions. I mean, what I did there in 3 weeks is nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. It probably, it's not even a band-aid. I said in one of my videos, honestly, it's not even a band-aid anymore. It's not. You probably, hugging a child over there was to give him some comfort for a moment's, an eye blink of a time. Because that same child, maybe tomorrow, and I worry about them, these children that I saw, maybe within a day or two, they would be shaheed or massacred. They would be gone. The same children, I dream about them. Right? I have pictures and I think about these kids, what is going to happen to them, because there is no state, there is no authority to coming to hold the hand of the oppressor, to stop the hand of the oppressor, to stop an end to this. And this is where, for the Ummah, I tell them, look, we have to go beyond looking at solutions from the West. We have to go beyond looking at solutions from liberal democracy, from the very perpetrators of this genocide, right? From these institutions that they have built to further their own agendas, whether it's the UN, whether it's the WTO, whether it's even the WHO or the Security Council, etc. These organizations are there to benefit only the West and their colonial policies in the Muslim countries and elsewhere. We cannot go taking our begging bowl to these institutions. We cannot go, and we have to think about it from a systemic perspective. The systems of colonial capitalism and secularism will not somehow become benevolent. Because it's within their nature to colonize you, to oppress you, to take and to prevent you from the rule of Islam. And that's why, and this is where, again in Surah Al-Saf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. That Allah has revealed this deen of haqq, this deen of truth, deen of justice, so that it can overpower, supersede, and dominate over all other ways of life, whether it's democracy, secularism, etc. And if we don't have this vision, then I think we're missing a big part in what is actually happening in the world, right? This is one genocide that we're witnessing. There's another genocide happening. There's another mass massacre happening. We've seen it. I mean, in just you and I, we grew up basically at the same time in the same neighborhood, right? uh,
Doing the same things too, bro.
you know, I mean, for
Allah
the
accept it
past
from us.
30 years, it's been nonstop. I remember every Ramadan there was some suffering of the Ummah we prayed for.
Right? Chechnya
Some
to Bosnia to
donations,
Iraq and
every
Allah
time.
knows.
So,
Gujarat, we saw the Gujarat
correct,
3000.
exactly. So the call cannot be where we go back to these same institutions and ask for help, or we say, look, let's figure out lesser of the two evils and go with that option. Lesser of the two evils is the fastest downward spiral to more evil.
Right.
Biden was lesser of the two evil, by the way. Right? Biden was lesser of the two evil, and he has been the worst in terms of. I mean, he's, by the way, look, known Zionist. For 40 years, he's been saying, I'm a Zionist.
Yeah.
How is he?
You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, is his statement.
Exactly what he said.
Yeah.
So we have to look at it, again, to summarize, we have to look at this issue from a civilizational ideological perspective. We cannot continue to put our trust and hope in Western institutions. We have to be our own agents of change. We have to become independent in how we call for the Deen of Islam. We have to call for the implementation of the justice of Islam, so that we as an ummah, as a collective, as a united front, be able to solve our problems on our behest, and remove these sort of rulers that do the bidding of the West. If it was not for Egypt or Jordan or Erdogan and so forth, who are the real IDF, who are the real defense for the Zionist entity, this could have been ended within hours.
And they don't hide that either. I mean, I
We
hear
don't,
the
yeah.
Yahud saying it. Hey, your own people support us. They say they scream and they're
Yes,
yelling
yes.
and all these different videos that we're watching. Your own people abandoned it. So I mean, it doesn't have. It's more. It's not. It can't get any more clear
I
than
mean,
this.
and this is where I think with the ulama, I would say, look, it's high time that we call for the true solutions to this. Right? We cannot continue to tell people that choose between the lesser of the two evils. Even if you're living in the West, you have the ability to push the Muslims to mobilize on the streets, to call for the removal of these oppressors, to call for the establishment of the rule of Islam, and to mobilize the forces to put an end to this. Right? How else is going to go? I mean, it's been 8 months. 8 months of people being bombed like you bomb like you shoot fish in a barrel.
Right.
You completely herd you into sheep, herd you into these pens as sheep for slaughter.
Right.
The iman of the people in Gaza is probably unquestionable by anybody. People say if you have iman, then Allah will solve the problem. Sure, 100%. Iman is the basis for everything for us, as we understand. But the practical reality is to hold the hand of the oppressor. Right? Who's going to do that? Who's going to stop? Who's going to open up the borders and allow the millions worth of aid that's coming in if the borders are closed? Someone has to hold the hand of the oppressor, open that border. And the one that is controlling that border is Sisi, Abdullah, and so on and so forth. The Ummah, believe me, man, the love for the Ummah, and we know this, you've seen it, the Ummah will sacrifice their lives. They'll walk in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
100%. There's no doubt. I have no doubt.
Of course.
100%. But there has to be a direction towards where they're going, and I think this is what we have to build the ummah towards and start thinking in this way, that the rule of Islam is needed. The implementation of the Sharia, the implementation of the Khilafah, implementation of the rule of Islam, so that you have a state whose only answer to what its purpose is the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to obey the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Its purpose is not the colonial nation state. Right? You don't answer to baby daddy America. Right? You're answering to only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the only purpose of this state, of this nation, of this rule of Islam, that it answers the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it serves the people, the ummah, not business interests, not colonial interests, not these corporations, not self-interest, and so forth. It's interesting. I'll end with this. Netanyahu, this is a few months ago, I think he said it in November actually. He said a message to the Arab regimes. He said, if you want your self-interest, you need to keep quiet. For your self-interest, you need to keep quiet. Better know your place.
Right.
Essentially, that's what I'm saying. You better know your place. To control your populations and do not interfere in what we're doing to the people in Gaza. This sort of nationalism has been the destruction of this ummah, unfortunately.
All right, Sheikh. With this, we have to go. Also, it's Maghrib time here. Sheikh, may Allah protect you and preserve you, Sheikh. Jazakallah khair. That's a topic by itself, the nation-state project, the failure of nation-state project, and we should talk about that one time in general. And as people who have seen the meaning of borders and how these borders are played out to be for the reasons for destruction of the Muslims, literally destruction of the Muslims. But Sheikh, Jazakallah khair, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to use you and us for his sake, for the sake of this ummah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect, preserve you and your family, and may Allah azza wa jal increase your status in the dunya and the akhirah, akhi. And as I said, may Allah continue to use you, akhi. And all of us, and please continue speaking any opportunity that you get. The Muslims have to know, look, we're calling this show, somebody on who's witnessed what's happening, inshallah Rabbul Alameen. And hopefully this discussion brings and opens doors for many other discussions for you, and also for many people who are wondering what should be done. And it's, again, hearing it from a doctor, hearing it from someone who's been on the ground, and giving a solution without fear. I mean, that's what's needed, and that's what we needed from our ulama, actually. And unfortunately, we see the ulama neglecting their responsibilities to speaking the haqq and speaking up. So, Jazakallah khair for that, Sheikh. And we will see you next time, another time on this show, inshallah Rabbul Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
لا لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر لا 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 لن يطول الظلام ديننا لن يضام نحن جيل الهمام نحن فينا عمر صبح بدا نور ظهر نجم وشمس وقمر ألقى على الدنيا الدرر هذا عمر هذا عمر كل البرايا تنتظر أيامه البيض الغرر كي تستفيد من العبر هذا عمر هذا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح نحن أهل الكفاح نحن فينا عمر لا لن تدوم الجراح بل سيأتي الصباح